For those who don't know me, I think I know everybody at this point on the call, but I'm Deborah King, and I chair the New York Choral Consortium. And our annual Programs Day, typically in October, I think always in October, focuses on one particular area, usually, sometimes several areas. And in this case, we've chosen to ask Dr. McCorvey, who chairs our Diversity in Action work, to put this workshop together. And I know I personally am so excited about work that's being done in this area through the consortium, and specifically about this session today. And we have some updates on what else is going on in this area that we'll introduce later on in our session today. But in the meantime, Everett, I'm just going to turn it over to you. You have scheduled this and invited our guests, and welcome everybody.
Well, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here and delighted that you are here. And I want to let you know that the session is being recorded so that we can share it on our website and also have it for those who were not able to attend today. And because I think it's also going to be a wonderful resource for our choirs in the New York area to get to know these wonderful composers. Most of you have been able, all of you have been able to read about their bios on the website, and our agenda is so packed that I'm not going to reread their bios as they are introduced, but I sort of sent them a note of as I was talking about this day, as I explained what Programs Day was, I will do that for you who are not from the New York area, who may not know what Programs Day is all about. But it's an event sponsored by the New York Choral Consortium where a topic is developed and a program is planned around that specific topic as a learning opportunity for the conductors, for course members, consortium members, who are in the New York area and beyond. And luckily, even though this organization was created for conductors in the New York area, it has really gone far beyond that now and is affecting the work of conductors around the country and in courses around the country. And so I also said, what is the goal of this year's Programs Day? And I told the composers that the goal is for our consortium members to get to know them. And so with that in mind, we wanted to create a platform and an opportunity for the composers to talk about what they do and to play some selections from their works, give you opportunities to ask questions, and hopefully by the end of their session, it will pique your curiosity so that you will want to know more about them and at some point program their music and create more of a personal relationship with them. So I've asked each of them to talk a little bit about themselves, their compositional style, play some selections from YouTube or some of the other recordings, just so that you get an idea of what they're doing. They each have 25 minutes basically to talk, 20 minutes, and then I gave them 5 minutes to play some things, and everybody's doing it a little differently. And I asked my friend and colleague, Dr. Kathy Bullock, to sort of start us out in terms of giving us a reason for the day. And Dr. Bullock is a conductor and also musicologist, and we have collaborated on many projects throughout our careers together. Most of her career was at Berea College, but now she's up in, where are you, Vermont right now? Yeah, and
I'm in Bennington, Vermont. At Bennington College.
Yes, and so I'm going to turn the program over to Dr. Bullock and let her sort of start the day and let you know why we're here. So, Kathy, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Everett McCorvey. Greetings to everybody. I'm going to begin by sharing a screen, and I'm hoping all works well here and I push my little dot to say I'm starting our presentation. Let's see, I'll start off, and let me see, I'm going to, from the beginning. Okay, everybody should see this. The thing is about Black choral composers of the United States, and it really is America's story. And I've taken this poster from a site of Blake Morgan, who will probably be referenced again, about wonderful Black choral composers. I want to start with this wonderful quote that was made by Antonin Dvorak back in 1893. You know, he was just becoming the director of the National Conservatory of Music in America from the Czech Republic. And he says, I'm now satisfied that the future of this country must be founded upon what are called the Negro melodies. This must be the real foundation of any serious and original school of composition to be developed in the U.S. When I first came here last year, I was impressed with this idea, and it has developed into a settled conviction. These beautiful and varied arts are the product of the soil. They are American. So in the Negro melodies of America, I discover all that is needed for a great and noble school of music. The pathetic, tender, passionate, melancholy, solemn, religious, bold, merry, gay, or what you will. It is the music that suits itself to any mood or composition that cannot be supplied with themes from its source. So it was a roundedly assertive confirmation of this music from the U.S. by somebody who was not from the U.S. but was just blown away by what he heard. Now let's go 100 years later. What's going on in the same United States? Has anybody taken note of this? The fact about this fabulous music that is emerging from the soil, this American music? Evelyn White, who was a distinguished professor of music at Howard University, was at a convention of the National Association of Negro Musicians in Chicago in 1991. And she said, which examined the catalogs, recommended list of choral music and choral programs, it will reveal glaring omissions of classical music by African American composers. A recent survey revealed, one, a choral conducting book listing approximately 500 choral compositions included only 2% by African American composers, and all were spirituals. A second book listing 300 choral compositions gave only one classical work by an African American composer, and three, a popular list of 1,200 compositions listed one classical piece by an African American. Furthermore, choral music programs presented at 3 national music conventions contained approximately 700 compositions. None were by African American composers, except for 3 arrangements. And if you go to your trusty music history book, how many Black composers do we find in those when talking about the history of music for our classes? How much American music do we find? Not a lot at all, very limited. So why is this important? What's the big deal? What do we need to resolve from these conclusions? What is the music? Who created it? And I'm going to answer some of these questions in about 15 minutes. So the first one would be who the people are, and just giving some background and acknowledgement to the ancestors, those who came before us. When we're talking about Black people, we're talking about people with African ancestry who have come to this country. And this African ancestry included royalty, kings, queens, people who were at the top in terms of agriculture, agrarian, it's all kinds of things, and for which music was a part of all life. So greatness would be the word, because we think of Mother Africa, all society coming from that space. Okay, so then there is the slave trade, where these folks were forcibly transported to places from Africa to South America, actually to Europe and to North America in the slave trade. Millions went on this journey. Millions died. But those who survived the horrendous journeys and ended up in the United States were those who now began this new experience and a new culture, which was a combination of African heritage, the Western European and Western influences, and their shared experience in the United States as African Americans. That was hundreds of years. So out of that emerged a culture that we use the term African American today to define. And remember, culture is fluid, but there are still some generalities that we can make about the basis or the foundation upon which this was created. And in this foundation of Black people in the United States at this time, this was what many call just forced migration. It's unbelievable in the horrors that were sustained that there was a spirit that remained unquenchable. There was a brilliance, there was a strength in body and mind and survival that came with this new culture. And we can see it most clearly in the music. People marched to make a way for equality, because even though this is the land of the free and the home of the brave, in the United States, built into its very texture and essence was inequality between people of African origin and others. And so there was this continuing to present day. And with that inequality, knowing Black people as maybe subhuman and not having the wisdom or interest, there became this conundrum. Out of this community was this beautiful music created by African Americans. But how can you honor and love this music when you say the people who make it are not worthy of it? How do you do this in this society in the U.S.? And because of that, we find so many times when phenomenal Black composers, artists are left out, ignored, or minimized, because it comes from that psyche that is part of the whole system under which we live, has been built. And this continuation to fight against that for this equity that develops. But the result of that is that, well, slavery was really free labor, y'all, hundreds of years of free labor, okay? But the background is concepts that Blacks were not equal, and reconciliation fully is still needing to happen. We're working on it. In all of that, there was this new culture that emerged with these new brilliant folks. And these are just some examples in so many ways. So if you truly think of the US of America, then Black people are a core part of it. And the music that was created could only have happened here in the US. So this new culture, this new music, the first form of it was the spirituals. But if you look at this graphic map, this is by Dr. Portia Maltsby. Look at the African American musical roots and every style of music that we think of popular that evolved in the United States. It came out of the African American tradition or was influenced by it. It's as simple as that. So there's this brand new body of musical literature, particularly the spirituals, but musicians, Black people, were involved in every kind of music you can imagine. There were composers and performers in every part of life. With country music, there were blues artists, who country musicians talk about, who influenced them. When we talk about Appalachians, some of them call it hillbilly music. Think of the Black guitar and fiddle players, even shape note singers. They had a colored shape note troupe. The Shakers in particular in Kentucky and other places. There were Blacks who were Shakers and who wrote music in that period. So if there was music going on, there were Black folk that were involved in it, just like in other areas of the country. So particularly now in the classical music, Black musicians have been formally trained even before we have the US as it is. There would be people of African descent who were in Europe and Caribbean descent who were trained, had formal training, classical, and were able to compose music and coordinate that with their own training. with their, to make their own new style. But when we get to the United States, that was happening as well. So we can go all the way back to 1911 and find Black people, Joplin, who had written an opera. We have William Grant Still in the early 20s, who was called the Dean of Composers. It was so fantastic, the work that he did. And these people were awarded all kinds of acknowledgments for their music. At the same time, there were many things that were blocking them from just fully expressing who they are because of the environment, country in which they lived. But know that from the very onset of classical music in the United States, Black people were involved, were participating, were contributing fantastic materials to that. Some of the authors or the people that talk about choral literature, Black choral literature, and the composers divided into maybe two areas, and they called the earlier group from before the 1900s and then up to about 1950, they called them synthesizers. And then from 1950 on, they called them eclectics. And what they mean by that is the earlier people like William Grant Still and Dent and Harry Burleigh, who studied under Dvorak, made a concerted effort to take the folk musics from their traditions and use that as compositional materials for their works, in fusing it into European forms, such as the opera or anthems or those kinds of things. But in essence, when it came to the spiritual, they created a new form, the arranged spiritual. Because now we have a form that emerged in the Black community, and the arranged spiritual included classical techniques and ways of production, but maintained the lyrics and the words, and you have a brand new art form. And these art forms are loved throughout the world. It's a wonder out of such a horrendous experience has emerged such a phenomenal and beautiful music that is transformative and healing to all those who sing and listen to it. But that's the deal. And so when we move to these are some of the men that were very prominent. These are some of the women that were also prominent. Now, Florence Price and Julia Perry at the turn of the century, well, the earlier part of the 1900s, they were also writing symphonies. These are Black women, as well as operas. One started their own opera company because they needed to have this happen. So being active in the classical world and all these writing choral compositions. Now, the spiritual was one of the key areas in which this happened, but not the only one. And so it moves to, there were, I think I mentioned operas that were written in symphonies as well, but we're focusing on choral music and literature. So the point is, why should it be included? Let's listen to a few examples of some music. And I planned to do this so you could not see the title. So you could tell me what you think about this. Does this fit your, if you have a thought about Black music or music by a Black composer? Now I'll start with the very first one. And this is... This is by the great American Spiritual Ensemble, directed by the great Dr. Everett McCorvey. And on their recording, this is a spiritual in the arranged spiritual form, the quintessential of this gorgeous style of music. And it takes the song, give me that old time religion. Give me that old time religion. And then it takes it and moves into some things. Let me see real quickly if I run out of time. I want to go to the end. Let me see. Notice the polyphonic texture that was being used. Oh, sorry. The polyphonic texture and all the techniques that were added to what was a simple but beautiful melody. And that was typical of the arranged spiritual. But then we have Wanderthirst by Florence Price. And listen to a little of that. Now, this song was taken from lyrics by Gerald Gould, who is an English journalist and poet, and talking about how I wander. So definitely using a different text. This one is by Adolphus Hailstork, a living composer, and it was done recently. You can tell by the mask. They're also good. I want to take them, but I'm running out of time, so I just want you to get a taste. Look at this one. It's Love Made Me Welcome, and by David Hurd. And this group is the Georgia Boy Choir in Europe. Think of the sonorities, the beautiful sonorities, and the way this song flows. Love Make Me Welcome. And most recently, Matana Roberts, she would, many are calling her a Black avant-garde. In response to the killing of Breonna Taylor, she did an elegy, and it was held out in the graveyard. It's called We Got Time, taken from one of the jurors who was told for the Breonna Taylor case that they have to stop because they're running out of time to show whatever the evidence, and the jury hollered, "We got time." And so it really is mourning that. But just think of just that. Let me go to, I better stop because I'm getting ready. I'm getting 5 things at once. What I wanted to say for that, choral works, why should they be included? One, concert music of the Black composers represents a body of works that is part of American music. It's American music. It includes musical forms that could only have happened in the US. The music has value. Black composers have substantial works that have won critical acclaim, prize awards, frequent performances, and the sources come from African influences, African-American culture, and Euro-American influences. So it's like you get all kinds of possibilities for just listening to them. You don't know what it's going to be, and it's so exciting. That spirit of inclusiveness requires we examine ways to present music to our students, to our singers from various cultural groups outside of the Western Euro tradition. Black composers are stylistically diverse, just like any other group of composers. So they are heirs to multiple legacies and traditions. And out of those, they will tell you and let you know what their voice is and what influences and who they are in this. And so why was it not included? Because of the exclusion and denigrating or minimizing the people who made music, so it's difficult to celebrate it. And then that's why so little so firm. But today, like any other immigrant groups in the US, people bring their full experiences. So Black composers over 100 years have been composing, creating new forms, perfecting others, and those are the people today. Okay, my little thing went off for my time, and I wanted to just show you the picture, which leads into the next group, and that is right here. Some folks ask, do you have to be Black to perform it? How accessible is it? But you you answer these questions as we go through. But you're invited, and I ask you not to presume or assume that all of the music is going to be one style, and whatever that style is, or it's all going to be African American based or Euro based. But do presume that these composers want you to perform their music and want you to learn about their styles and dare to explore on top of that. So with that, I will, let me see, move us to the final picture, and that takes us to these fabulous choral composers you'll meet today. That's all she wrote.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful, Kathy. That's a lot of information in a very short period of time. And I know I'm very happy that it's being recorded so that I can go back and digest it even more. We're going to go on to our next composer to feature. And when I think of Dr. Timothy Amukele, I think of Charles Ives in so many ways. And I tell you why. You know, Charles Ives was a recognized, composer, but, his day job was selling insurance. And so Dr. Amukele is a real doctor. And so his day job is saving lives. And but he is also an incredibly recognized and incredible composer. And so, Dr. Timothy, I'm going to let you take it away and say thank you, first of all, for being here and doing this.
It is my pleasure. I will just give me a second. I'm going to share one more piece. Let me turn on my timer. I doubt that I'll take my full time, but there you go. It's going. Let me just share. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so I am Dr. Bullock. That was fabulous. Honestly, I learned some stuff. A lot of those names I didn't even know. So I was busy Googling in the background while you were sharing it. So I hope we'll have access to that presentation. So, all right, I've put 2 pieces of music into the chat. But you don't have to, you can download it now, but I will get to it in due course. So I just wanted to say thank you again, Dr. McCorvey, for this honor. I'm so excited to be here and happy. So my bio is and thanks for the comparison to Charles Ives. It's very apt. It actually makes a lot of sense. So yeah, because I was going to share my bio just to kind of make sense of it. Sorry, a lot of thoughts are flowing through my head. Calm down, Tim, calm down, calm down. I grew up with sort of a leg in 2 worlds. Which has become very valuable to me musically. My dad was in law school when I was born in Toledo, Ohio. And so I grew up there for not for long. By age 2, we had moved to Nigeria, where I grew up. And so I grew up with the influences of American and also say European classical music, but also in the continent of Africa, directly absorbing African music. By age 8 or so, I had joined a boy band, and I'm going to share a sort of embarrassing picture of us. But I hope you like it. I had joined a boy band. Oh, wait, let's see, it says share screen. Okay, here it goes. Yep, I'll just share my, the PowerPoint presentation here. So, and I was the kid on the left, second from the left. And my friend who was standing to my left, his mom was our manager, and she would dress us up, and we were on the road, and like it was a real thing. And we had fans and the whole thing. Of course, this was all before social media, so. But this is just one picture I found, and then by age 12, I started writing music, and in college, I also did music and biochemistry. So I was always had this two paths going. My brother was a real mentor for me. He is 2 years older than me. And so he had gotten into medical school 2 years ahead of me. And let me stop sharing. And so he was like, Tim, you should do it. You're smart. You already have a science degree. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do. So it's like, just do it, just apply. So I applied and I got in, and the rest, as they say, is history. But the whole time I've kept doing music. Not at the same level of output, obviously, but yeah, this is my heart. So I want to introduce you to two fields, two sort of pillars of my output. One, and I swear Dr. Bullock and I did not plan this. One is African choral music. And I've shared a piece with you in the chat. And it comes in a range of styles and languages. So before I go there, let me say this is music of the people. So this is not necessarily, the music I transcribe is not music written by, say, professors at the University of Ghana for professional choirs, which is also, there's plenty of that too, right? But it's not that. It is music that people sing in churches, and so forth. And so I've made a point of transcribing this, and I'm hoping at some point over the next maybe 12, 18 months to put out a collection of these. But in the meantime, I want to give you a preview, and also say, if you're interested in talking more about this, even though it has not been published, I'm happy to meet with you personally and either share music or give a workshop or something. But in the range of styles is really broad. So there are pieces that are like a march. So there's for example, this piece is called Mayen Odo, and means give us love. So it goes, Mayen Odo, yes, we, Mayen Odo to the Mayen Odo, yes, we, Mayen Odo. So it's just a march, right? It's a simple, which would be easy for anyone to learn. And then the one I just gave you is called Eraze or Aurade. And I put that in there as an example of something that's rhythmically tricky. So it's, if I did it in fours, and so on. So it covers the range, but it's exciting music. It's good stuff. So I just gave, so start with this piece and go on from there. I realize now, because I just started transcribing these for my own pleasure, but I realize now I really have to have it in IPA because it's just too difficult. But even I have the challenge. So for example, this song I just sort of sang a bit to you. It's not a language I speak. It's a song I heard that I loved. It fits out of the African choral tradition. And I was like, I have to transcribe this song. So what I did was, I knew the melody in my head. I knew kind of the sound. And so I went to the Bronx Seventh-day Adventist Ghanaian church. And I said, I got to meet your choir director. And they led me to whoever it was. And this is the strength of America, right? Like I could have said, oh, I want to go to the Hungarian church and meet, and it's there. So I went and met the choir director and some of the choir members, and I sang this, and they're like, oh, we know that song. And so then I just took dictation, sort of live. That's how this sheet of music in your hand came to be. But anyway, okay, so that's one. on my website, which I'm going to share screen now again, there's more stuff. Okay, so you're going to see yourself on screen for a minute. Don't be scared. Okay, here you go. There's on my website, there's more music. So so you can feel free to, this is what it looks like. And then compositions, if you go to compositions, where I have solo and voice, choral music, instrumental, but you can click the choral tab and look at some of that. But I have a bunch of other music and spirituals also. Okay, so now switching gears. I wanted to spend the majority of my time, let's look at the clock, good, talking about my Christmas cantata, What Sweeter Music. And I'm going to share one of the title piece from the work. So What Sweeter Music is an hour-long work inspired obviously by the poem by Robert Herrick, which has been set multiple times by other composers, including John Rutter. And the way it happened, and it's for choir, 4 soloists, and the default score is for piano and violin, and I've shared one of those in the chat for you. But the way this piece happened was my pastor. This is back in Seattle, and this is while I was doing my residency. I was doing my residency and run over to the church, play, come back, like that. Said, you know, Tim, we should do something for Christmas. And I was like, yeah, that's great. And he's like, but I don't want to do the regular Christmas stuff. I want to do something different. So I just went too far, basically. I didn't know, I couldn't stop myself. And I didn't have this work in that first year, but I had a skeleton. And then over time, I've just worked on it. And now I have what I feel is a finished product. So the style is in the style of lessons and carols with a narrator leading the whole thing. And there's a reading before each performance and so forth. So yeah, so I'll just take you through the website and I'll play the piece and that'll be it. All right, so this is the website. This is what it looks like. And there are things to click on the top, but the main thing to look at are these 4 tabs. On the left is a free preview score. And so if you go in there, you can put your email and then you'll get a copy of this score preview copy. If you want something to listen to while you're working through the score, there's all the audio tracks, and these are all piano vocal tracks. So it's you know, we put a lot of work into getting this really ready for easy adoption. And if you want to buy the sheet music, thank you very much. It's here. And last but not least, if you want to see what a performance could look like, we did sort of a trial demo performance at the height of COVID, pre-vaccine in Baltimore. And so the video came out pretty nicely, and so I have it online. And I have clips of each song, but I also have the full performance. And then this is the one I'm going to play for you guys, just the one piece. So the piece I'm going to share is called What Sweeter Music, which again is the title song of this work. And the poem you all know is What Sweeter Music Can We Bring Than a Carol for to Sing the Birth of This Our Heavenly King. And earlier settings had been much more melodic and just a different vibe. But when I came to the text, it felt like it had needed, it was, because the text is just really alive. And even by the second verse, he says, and who is the Lord of all this reveling? Right. So the idea is that this is a revel, this is a party. And so I wanted to capture that. And so I set it in 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, to have this kind of forward momentum, this feeling of a gallop. And then because I can't help myself and I like syncopation, I had I set it so it's a dotted quarter on top of the 5. So bum bum ba-dum bum bum bottom, and that's the feeling of the whole song. What sweeter music. So I hope you enjoy it. I'm gonna set it up now.
For Mary.
Can you hear that? Okay, great.
As for us, it is done.
Oh, let's see. Come on. Okay.
According to Luke 2, while they were there, the time.
Oh, sorry. One more thing. Because of the when we recorded it, we did not have singers on stage, obviously, but we had the recording by a chorus, and we had 2 dancers present the piece.
Came for her to give birth. She gave birth to a son, her firstborn. She wrapped him in a blanket and laid him in a manger. What sweeter music can we bring than a carol for to sing the birth of this, our heavenly King?
Thank you. So that's it. I yield the rest of my time.
Oh, that's wonderful. What a wonderful way to begin this. Thank you so much for doing that. And we'll have time for questions at the end because we want to make sure that I know people will have questions. I have a quick question for you because I'm thinking of programming this piece for Christmas this year. And and so the orchestra parts are available. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. And probably if there is a configuration, an orchestra configuration that maybe is different from what you have, I bet people could contact you and
Exactly.
say, "Hey Tim, we have these forces. Can you do
Yes.
something with those forces?" Is that correct?
That is correct. That is
Yeah.
correct. I could not be more eager to see it performed and hear it performed and see my baby out in the world. So yes, I'm flexible and work fast.
And how long is the entire?
The entire work is an hour long.
Mhm.
And as you heard, it is, most of it was in unison. That is intentional, because I literally wrote it for my church choir, and my church choir was like, the regular church choir was not a professional choir, 8 sopranos, 1 alto, that kind of thing. So I thought, I better keep the interest in the rhythm. So a lot of it's rhythmically interesting. A lot of unison singing, and then harmonies at key points to just punch. And yeah, yes.
And so, in the other piece that you shared with us, do you have a recording of that yet?
I
Or
do. It's not a great recording, but I can share it. Yes, I do. I have one.
okay,
Yeah.
because that it seems like such a wonderful, way to open a concert or
Yes.
to engage people in the concert, and your interesting rhythms here are just they're incredible. So
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
well, that's great. Well, thank you for doing this, and we are so excited about this, and we will certainly make all of this available for our members. And as I said earlier, this we are recording this today so that the rest of the members who are not here and the choral directors who want to come online our website and access this will be able to do this so that they'll be able to find you. So thank you for
Thank
sharing your website and your music and all of that. I think we do have Cedric Dent online, and I'm excited to see him. Hello, Dr. Dent. How are you?
Hello, sir. It
It's
is
good to see you. I have to tell you a quick
you.
story about Cedric. Cedric and I went to school together. And if you all can imagine a master's recital that happens on a Saturday afternoon where, you're going to see a concert of your fellow classmate and it's Saturday and you're thinking, okay, we'll have about 3 people in the audience because it's Saturday. And so Cedric had his master's recital, and he said, and we had maybe 5 people in the audience. I don't remember, but he said, "I'm going to introduce you to some arrangements with a group that I'm working with now, and the group is called Alliance." And he said, we're working on some tunes, and this group called Alliance gets up to sing, and absolutely blows everybody out of the water. I had never heard a sound like that in my life. And he said, "Yeah, we're on our way out to see Stevie Wonder, I think it was. And we're going to sing for him." And the next thing I know, this group that was called Alliance is now called Take Six. And the Grammy, how many Grammys? I can't even. How many did you all win?
Don't put me on the spot like that, Everett. You're supposed to be my
And
friend.
of course, Take Six just takes the world by storm. And Cedric was one of the founding members of that group. And now he was working on his master's at the time, and now is his doctorate and is teaching, and it's just been a joy. So Cedric, I'm so happy to see you, and take it away.
It is an honor, really, to be introduced by you. What Dr. McCorvey didn't tell you was that he actually performed on my recital and put me on the map by performing one of my earliest compositions. And I should say too, Everett, that since then I've turned that song into a song cycle. I'm in the process of completing the third song in the cycle. I'm still not sure if I'm going to do a fourth, but it is near. I expanded it to tenor, piano, cello, and violin.
Oh, wow.
And, but it all started with the piece that you performed. You were so gracious, so encouraging, that I have never forgotten that, and I came back to it and am fleshing it out even more now.
Well, when you finish it, I'll be happy to sing the rest.
The first two have been premiered actually by colleagues of mine here at Middle Tennessee State, and I'll finish the third this before the year's out. I'm sure I'll have it done. So I'll keep you posted.
Okay.
But thank you so much for your gracious invitation. I see a face or two that I recognize. Hi, Diane. Good to see you, sis. I'm not sure if there is a particular format or protocol I should be following here. So just lead me and guide me.
Well, basically, we want to know about you and hear some of your music. I think you have the share screen that you can share some if you need to share screen.
Okay.
And then we'll Elisa will give you the time. A 5-minute warning when your time is finished.
Okay, let's do this then. My music is published by a couple of different publishers. Walton Music is one of my publishers that really focuses on my more traditional choral works, and then Anchor Music Publication does the pieces that are more geared towards vocal jazz ensembles. I thought I'd go to Walton's site first because you can play the music and have the score on the screen at the same time. And what I'll do is I'll just play, a minute or two of several pieces to kind of give you an idea. If you want to hear a little bit more, depending on the time, I can let it run, but I don't want to be presumptuous. Let me introduce my style of writing before I play a clip in this way. Because of my work with Take Six for 25 years before I eventually retired from the group, my choral style is very much influenced by the Take Six sound. If any of you are familiar with Take Six's music, hopefully you'll pick up on that influence as you hear some of these clips. But I'll also say this, that I am not the primary, or was not the primary arranger of the group. That honor goes to Mark Kibble, who actually created the sound of the group. I became a secondary arranger for the group and did quite a bit. And I'm proud to say that along the way, I was even nominated for one of my arrangements, which to me is just as huge an honor as winning an actual Grammy with the group, to be acknowledged individually that way. But let me say this, my sound in comparison to Mark's in the group it really does lean more towards a choral sound anyway. And that is because I grew up in a household with not one, but two parents who were both choir directors in our church. And so I was familiar with and introduced early on to a lot of choral music. I remember some of my fondest memories goes back to being in our youth choir and singing William Dawson's "Sooner Will Be Done" and Randall Thompson's "Alleluia," and Elijah Rock. Was that Jester Harrison, I believe, who did that one? That's what I cut my teeth on. So even when I joined Take Six, my approach is sort of a choral approach. The first piece I want to play a clip of is perhaps, well, it is the most recent thing published. It's an arrangement of He's Got the Whole World in His Hand, the spiritual. And it has been performed and recorded by the Jason Max Ferdinand Singers. Jason Max Ferdinand, of course, is a chair of music at Oakwood University in Huntsville, Alabama, the school that birthed Take Six. So there's a actual connection there, and director of the famed Oakwood University Aeolians. And he has now started a professional choral ensemble, and I'm happy that he invited me to be an artist and arranger in residence with that ensemble. And this is the first piece that that he commissioned for me. You'll hear three influences. You'll hear, of course, the Take Six flavor in there, but you'll also hear that it really is coming from a traditional choral style performance or approach. And then I've always been a big fan of the group Ladysmith Black Mambazo from South Africa. You'll hear that influence in this piece. And in fact, at the end, when I get a chance to play an entire clip, I'll come back to this, because at the end, the final chorus is actually sung in Zulu. So with that said, let me share my screen and see if I can go to it. I'm going to go here first. And see. And you see my PowerPoint slide there in front of you. Is it there? Okay,
yes,
good.
It's there, yeah.
All right, I'll play some of this. I'm gonna, and as I said, I'm gonna go to the Walton Music Publishers website and go down and play a clip of it. Hopefully you'll be able to see the score as it goes by as well. Maybe a minute or two, and then I'll move on. See here, can I get that up? There we go.
You may have to unshare and share again, because we're still seeing the.
Okay, just I'm sorry.
You may have to
share
unshare
again
and share again, because sometimes it gets stuck on we're still on your first.
Okay.
Now share your.
Here again.
Yeah.
Let's try
if it'll go to the YouTube.
Let me go.
I think you need to share the full screen.
Okay. Let's see. Where do I do that? Share full screen. Is there a?
No, you're fine. If you go to, once you open the YouTube.
There you are.
Can you see that?
Now we see He's Got the Whole World in His Hand.
You see it there? No.
Mhm.
Okay. Let's see. Let's start this again if I can.
He's got the whole world
stop it right there. That's the that's a little clip of that. Now I do have a video clip of the full performance of the Jason Max Ferdinand singers that I'd love to come back to at the end and play the full performance for you there. But as I said, you know, I cut my teeth really on traditional choral music. And while I was at the University of Alabama, Everett, there was another piece that that you sang in the choir with. I don't know if you recall this, this piece that I composed called "Examine Me," that is now has also been published. And this was really before I became completely immersed in the Take Six sound. So this really sort of predates my Take Six days. I'll play a little bit of that. It comes, if anyone's interested, there is a piano choral version of it, but if you can see my screen still, there is also an orchestral accompaniment version of it that has also been performed by I believe the Aeolians performed it. Yeah, it was the Oakwood University Aeolians that performed this. Here's a clip of it. You'll hear the orchestra, but I'm gonna use the vocal score for you to watch along. Let me put my volume back up. Here's a little bit of this. You'll hear the choral parts, as I say, are a little more traditional in this piece. There's a bit of that for you. How much time do I have? Am I up against it?
You're doing good. You have about 10 more minutes.
Okay. Another piece, since I'm still here on the Walton site. A more recent piece that I did was an arrangement of the benedictory hymn, God Be With You. You may be familiar with that. It's really more influenced by contemporary choral composers like Eric Whitaker, Morton Lauritsen, and Jake Runestad, those kinds of writers. I'll play a little bit of that. It's actually pretty short because it's, you know, I thought of it as a benediction. So I may get all the way through this one. Let's see. So those are well, those are all the pieces. I do have some more in the pipeline that will be coming from Walton Music as well. I want to, before I run out of time, I really wanted to also mention a piece that was performed by the Nashville Symphony Orchestra and Chorus for their annual Let Freedom Sing concert that is always held in celebration of Martin Luther King's birthday. It's called Hear the Drum. And when they commissioned it, they asked me to do something inspired by Martin Luther King's the drum major instinct speech. Sometimes it's called the drum major for justice speech. And so I wanted to play just a little bit of that before I get out of here. I don't have the sheet music on the screen for you, but I do have words on the screen for you if you can still see my screen. And I'll play just a little bit of that. Are you still?
No, it's still in the other. So you
Okay,
may have to.
I guess to go back and share again.
Yeah, you might have to do that.
Go to that screen. How about that? How about that?
Yeah. Yes. Hear the drum. I hear it. I see it.
Okay, just a little bit of this. Also,
I can lower this to work on mine.
this can also this also is available with full orchestra accompaniment or just piano accompaniment as well.
I hear the drums speaking words. It's a constant beat. It speaks of things we should know. The world can barely see. It unifies other sounds, brass and timpani. As one sweet accord, all in harmony. The talking drum has a word for all the world to hear. Knowledge and wisdom inspires hope, and love will conquer.
Oh, sorry about that. Anyway, I was going to stop it right after the that chorus anyway, in the interest of time. But I thought I'd present that for anybody that's maybe looking for something to program during Black History Month, or something related to civil rights. That's my presentation. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That is great, Cedric. Thank you so much. I wanted to hear the rap part, but I
have to say the rap is fire.
You still have 4 minutes.
You still have 4 minutes.
It was. I can go back and play a little bit of that. My son actually wrote that, who is now a staff writer for one of the local newspapers here in town. He's just an incredible talent as a writer. Let me see if I can pull that back up really quickly here. Where was that? Here. Let me go back. Share. Let's see. If I can get to it. I'll see if I can slow.
living, breathing like a rhythm, counting out the beats of every minute, streaming steady, driven, drowning out these people never listen. They focus on when drum majors will always run from focus. They want recognition, and if recognition is your second mission, your priority should be the way you and your neighbor live in perfect rhythm. That's the way you say the world and make it bad good. Live in perfect pocket, how a quarterback should.
Listen to your brother, word from the drum. Justice for others, word from the drum. Keep your tongue is living, word from the drum. Never rest. Have you heard from the drum? Freedom's like a rhythm, word from the drum. Freedom's how you win it, word from the drum. You and I can win, we can win. Hear the call to arms, someone join our cause. Love is our battle cry.
So
That's fantastic.
can you imagine, man, my, let's see, at the time, he was about 25-year-old son standing on stage in front of 70-piece orchestra, 100 voice choir, trying to look like he's not nervous and performing that rap. Of course, I couldn't be more proud.
Well, of course.
I was a proud dad.
Oh, that's great. That is fantastic. Well, thank you so much for doing this and sharing this music with you. So, Walton Publications, and where's the other?
Anchor Music
Anchor.
Publications. In the interest of time, I didn't play anything from them, but I can. Let me see if I can go back to it. You can see. Are you still seeing the screen?
No, we're back to the full.
I don't know why. I'm still. Let me go back. Let's see here. Back to the screen. I'll put it back up here now. How about now?
Yeah.
You can see it at the bottom of that.
Yes.
There. That's Anchor Music Publications.
Okay. All right. That's great. And because we would like, and this is on your website also, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll make sure that people get that website so that we had a question about how to access the unpublished Hear the Drum. Is there a way that people can?
Sure. Just contact me personally. I've got my email on this at the top left of this screen, cedric.dent@mtsu.edu. And I'm happy to make that available. Of course, as a working composer arranger, I've got tons of unpublished things that other people have performed as well. So
That's great. And maybe what we'll do is ask all the composers to put their email address in the chat, and then that way everybody can copy and paste and send it to everybody so that we can have that as well. This is great. Thank you so much, Cedric. We really appreciate you being with us. Hope you can hang out a while. We are going to take a little break now so that people can get their coffee, and then we'll come back for our 11:30 presentation by Dr. Rosephayne Powell. And so she is already on the line. I see that. So welcome. And but we'll give everybody a chance to go and get a cup of coffee and come right back. So let's meet about 11:28, 11:29, so that we can start right at 11:30. So thank you all so much.
and thank you.
Hope we're all making our way back so that we can get started.
Everett, thank you for putting this together. And
Well,
thanks to all of our wonderful artists who are contributing their work and their thoughts and inspiration. It's terrific.
well, thank you so much. And I want to thank the New York Choral Consortium for making space for this. And Deborah, it might be a good time just to say welcome again as our chair of the board, since we are starting back again. And this came out of a project with the board, and I'm just really excited about it. So thank you for allowing the space. So maybe you can say a little welcome.
I wonder if this might even be a time to do an introduction. It's a little earlier than we'd planned, but as we're regathering, what do you think, Everett?
Absolutely.
Okay. And Mary's back on, so we may just join all of that together. Yeah, Everett came on the board in, when would it, I guess it was spring if it was COVID time.
COVID,
but,
yeah.
yeah,
Right.
but like in March or something, you and I spoke about your joining the board of the New York Choral Consortium, and we typically bring in new members of the board in an at-large manner for a year, and typically a new board member will kind of get some ideas about what they want to contribute and where they can fit in best and so forth. And it was about 3 minutes that Everett had as an at-large member because suddenly, all of a sudden, we had not one but two pandemics on our hands. And I think one of them was fairly new to the world, that being COVID, and the other one had been ongoing for a long time, but was all of a sudden became prominent. And as artists, of course, we couldn't not respond. We didn't want to not respond. And so I talked with Everett about, what do you see our doing with this? And P.S., would you be willing to kind of help us into this area? And so he agreed to become we decided on the title, Chair of Diversity in Action. We didn't want it to just be diversity. We didn't want it to just be a thing. We want it to be an active verb. And so we want to build the resources and to offer the opportunity that will not be a one-off, but will be an ongoing and continuing resource, hopefully not just to the New York City choral community, but to a much broader base as well. We do look at New York as holding somewhat of a responsible position in the choral community overall, because it's New York. And just by virtue of being New York, we tend to attract certain eyes, and we want to be worthy of those eyes. So in continuing to develop this area, and provide growing resources. As a board, we just have discussed fairly recently taking on resources that are already in existence and keeping them updated and expanding upon them. And most specifically, we have begun an opportunity that I'm very excited about. We have taken on an intern at, we've got funding to support an intern to look at, as a starting point, Dr. Garrett's marvelous Beyond Elijah Rock repertoire list. I know I personally I've gone through it with as fine a tooth comb as I can, and have found wonderful resources there, and have performed many things I have found there. And have also hit some roadblocks. Some links are no longer, as anything e-based, things get outdated. And so I thought, well, if we could at least start with updating that list, and then once that's done and put in a form that we can keep updated as we go along, well, that's got to be defined. Then hopefully we can have a resource that people can go to, even worldwide, but certainly even beyond New York. So the place to start was with Dr. Garrett himself, since he is the originator of that list. I reached out to him and he said, well, yes, I do have a graduate student that I would recommend as your intern. Why don't you talk with Mary Doherty? And so Mary, wave at us again. Okay, from the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. And Mary, you are a doctoral student in conducting, fairly new in the program, yes?
Yes, ma'am. First year.
All right. And is very excited to take on this project. And we're currently structuring it together along with Dr. Garrett. And this will be part of our ongoing emerging resources area within the diversity in action portion of our website. So that's our bit of news today as part of how we're seeking to continue to develop this resource and ultimately beyond the Black community, but that's where we're starting, because I think that's where we can start. We already have a substantial resource. Let's start with making that as valuable as it can be and see where it goes from there. And I don't know about you, Mary, but I've been writing all kinds of notes like, oh, we've got to be sure and include this, and let's make sure that we. Yep. Do you have anything to say to us? I mean, we're just so glad you're with us today.
I'm so honored to be here. I didn't know that Dr. Cedric Dent would be here, but I'm just honored to be included and taking massive notes. My colleagues and I were talking a couple days ago at lunch even about programming more Black composers, more women composers. And one of them in particular said, I don't know where to start. And I just texted him and said, I have notes for you. Very exciting. Thank you.
Well, we're delighted to have you here, and we will talk more about this when Dr. Garrett gets online during his presentation. We have next Dr. Rosephayne Powell, and I'm telling you, I'm so excited about this because in my world of choral music education, as you're looking at all state conferences around the country, either she's there or her music's there and is in demand everywhere. And she's a professor at Auburn University in Alabama. And I'm just so excited to have her here. So Dr. Powell, thank you so much for being here. And it's great to see you and great to have you as part of this conference today. We are recording so that the rest of our members will be able to share this information and also hear all of the wonderful pieces and words that everybody's saying. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate. And of course, it was wonderful to hear Cedric's presentation before mine. So talk about being in good company with all of you. It's so good to be here. So I will begin by talking about my style of composition, and then I would like to play one of my works and we kind of map our way through that work to demonstrate some aspects of my compositional style. And so I will begin by saying that I consider myself to be, as far as melody, I would consider myself to be more of a neo-romantic composer. So I was influenced strongly as a soprano vocalist. I was influenced in the not only the opera, but in the art songs, and especially art songs, since that's what I compose in addition to choral music. I was influenced strongly by Giuseppe Verdi, and as far as an African-American composer of song, I am influenced by William Grant Still. So I like to have very singable, long and at times dramatic melodies, and these will be supported by harmonies that fall within, of course, the European, Western European tradition, and influenced by jazz, gospel, the African-American spirituals, R&B, other styles of African-American music. So that's my harmonic language. And rhythmically, I love syncopation. As a matter of fact, when I was a kid and first got introduced to band, I wanted to play the drum set. But my mom was like, hey, you're a girl, girls don't play drums. So I played sax. So I still love those jazz harmonies that I got to play on the sax, but I have always been driven by syncopation and strong rhythmic emphasis. And as far as textures, I love to employ both homophonic and polyphonic textures within my songs, in addition to those particular parts that may be unison and monophonic. But I was strongly influenced by the Baroque music of Handel and Bach, and I always enjoyed having those layers of lines on top of each other, entering at different times. So I think I combined that with the interweaving of vocal lines within gospel music, which is what I grew up in. So though both of those came together to be employed in my song composition. And as far as form, again, having studied the European composers, I love using ABA form, and I especially like using that when composing for high school choirs, because they make their way through the A section, then they press through to the B. Oh my gosh, they're excited when they return and find, hey, I don't have to learn anything new. A has returned. So a lot of my earlier works were in ABA form, and I've also composed a piece in rondo form, and but many of my works are in through composed form as well. The poets that I enjoy setting, I especially enjoy setting Langston Hughes. I've done several poems by him, including one that I will play today. And then there's Maya Angelou, as well as Georgia Douglas Johnson. As far as African-American poets, I've set poetry by each of those poets. And as well, I have set numerous psalms and other texts from the Bible, including a multi-movement work, The Cry of Jeremiah. I've done another work that was influenced by Robert Ray's Gospel Mass. I've composed a multi-movement work called The Gospel Trinity, which is based on God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And presently, I'm working on a multi-movement work on the life of Harriet Tubman. So I've done, and those particular works are generally orchestrated, sometimes by me and at other times by others. My music includes, I've heard it described as eclectic. I've got those works that are in the traditional Western European style, and they include sacred works such as motets and anthems. And additionally, I've arranged numerous spirituals. I have the secular poetry settings, including some of the poets that I mentioned. I've done arrangements of African folk songs. Like I said, the sacred multi-movement works for choir and orchestra. I've done several works that are gospel music, and as well some Caribbean folk songs. So now, if I can share the screen, I would like to play one of my compositions, To Sit and Dream, which is based on the poetry of Langston Hughes.
So you should have the ability to share at the bottom there, the share screen, and then now you're muted. You're muted now.
See if I can unmute her.
Give me just one moment.
Here we go.
Let's see, it stopped playing there.
So thank you. Thank you. So I'd like to take a few, I'd like to take a few moments in this piece to kind of map you through how I go about composing. And Everett, tap me when my time is up, okay? So on the front end, seeing the influence of knowing that Langston Hughes was a jazz pianist, in addition to being a jazz poet, I wanted to set this piece with the colors of jazz harmony. And I'm really into storytelling. So what I saw in this particular song was Langston Hughes coming, off the streets. And because he was involved with, the struggle for civil rights, I saw him on the streets of New York. He comes into his apartment or his home, and he's got this paper in his hands, and he sits down, and everything he reads is so negative. And so the intro is harmonically setting up the quietness of his apartment with the jazz harmonies of the clubs and the musicians he's just hung out with. They're going in his head, and he just sits quietly. So all of the sounds of the streets of New York, they're outside of his room. And he has this newspaper as he's reading it as this intro plays. And then he starts to think, to sit and dream, to sit and read, to sit and learn about our world of here and now, our problem world. All of this happens in this room. So this first part is basically an intro. The quietness of this time of reading and thinking. And now here comes more of the jazz colors. And now he's starting to daydream, which you hear in the piano colors. So right here, I take the voices using the tenors and the sopranos, the fact that he's imagining time outside our world. I tried to give the music a more ethereal effect by opening up the voices and having the upper voices saying outside our world. His mind, as he's daydreaming, is moving outside of America and all that's happening here. And then there's the whole thing that he's trying to move away from is our problem world. Interweaving of the voices. But the dreamy effect is always there in the piano. Now, in this section that's coming up, I take the sopranos and altos up into the upper tessiture of their voices to dream of vast horizons of the soul, of dreams made whole, unfettered, free. And when I get to unfettered, I state that it should be more in a declamative sort of recitative style, because those are words we don't hear often in poetry. And so I wanted to paint the picture of those words. And even though this choir sang it a little bit too much, I prefer unfettered, meaning set free, free, help me, All of you who are dreamers too, help me make our world anew. And then the men come begin at the bottom of the page. And right here, after in the dream, Langston Hughes is making a plea to anyone who will hear him to join him in making our world anew, meaning one of unity, one of equality, one of justice. And when the men come in with, I reach out my hand to you, I pictured that to dream of vast horizons of the soul, Langston Hughes had walked out of his apartment in the dream at this point, and he looks out at people who are walking by, and that's when he's looking up at the sky to dream of vast horizons of the soul, of dreams made whole, unfettered, free, and he starts to put his hand out saying, help me, all you who are dreamers too. Help me make our world anew. And when the men come in quietly with, I reach out my hand to you, Langston Hughes, in the dream, people start to look like non-persons. You see faces and bodies, but they're more like robots. They're people, but you can't see their eyes. You can just see that they're people, and it's blurry because they're people with no names and faces, just human beings. Each one reaches out his hand to the next. And as the voices continue to enter and overlap, each person that starts with one reaches out to another, then that one reaches out to another. Eventually, Langston Hughes is leading a group of people down the street, and they're all reaching out their hand. And eventually, by the time you come to the last one, you've got all of the people of New York joining one by one in this dream of unity. And they're all of one voice, because then I put it in unison. And now he reaches out his hand to the first person. And they're all moving slowly on the streets. And that's the end of the dream. He opens his eyes and he's still in his apartment alone, thinking that thought. The song is ending as it began. And it ends in a positive way with a smile on his face.
Wow, that's amazing.
Oops, sorry about that.
No, that's great. That's right on time. You are right on time. Thank you so much for doing that. That's, you know, it's so appropriate for what we're doing today, because that's exactly what we're doing today. We're sitting and dreaming and learning about the world, and in this case, it's the world of so many composers that you know, our country needs to know and needs to celebrate the music, and so that's really exciting. I didn't mean to cut you off. Any closing things you wanted to say?
No, this is just a bird's eye, and I think of my compositional style and storytelling. And I thank you for the opportunity to be able to share these insights into how I compose and why I compose. And generally, it is about sharing my heart and the impact of music and poetry upon me, and the hopefully how I compose this particular song tells you the impact of reading. It's a very short poem, but when I read this poem, this is who I saw Langston Hughes being at that moment, and it relates so much to who I am as well. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, and we would love for you to put your website or information if people want to get in touch with you. And I want to do this with all of the composers. If you will put it in your in the chat, so that you can so that we can reach out to you for information, or you know, as we go forward, and certainly your website and things like that. So thank you very much for doing this. We hope that you're able to stay on. We're going to move now to Dr. White-Clayton, and you have already met her sister, because Kathy Bullock, who presented at the beginning of the hour, is her sister, and I have known them as a team for many, many years. And so when I thought about this presentation, I thought about them presenting as a team. So Kathy put it in context at the beginning of what we are doing today. And I programmed Diane a little later in the program because she's out in California. And but she was the first one on. So so we're happy to have you, Diane, and please take it away.
Thank you so much, Dr. McCorvey. Thank you so much also, Dr. King, for undergirding this. I thought I would start with the first composition I ever wrote. I was 11 years old, and I was directing a choir. I was one of those kids who came here as an old soul. I was directing a choir of kids, but I was their mama. And I took the hymn, the lyrics to the hymn, "Take My Life and Let It Be." And you'll have to imagine the harmonies. I'll just play them, just the first line. Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to thee. Take myself and I will be ever only all for thee, ever only all for thee. I was really excited when I had the harmonies go. So the soprano stayed up and we just thought, you know, oh my goodness, we are just doing something. And I was doing something and I just didn't know it. I always wanted to be a composer. As Dr. McCorvey said, I've been blessed with a big sister. I have several sisters and a brother, but Kathy, who is 10 years older than me, even though she looks younger, was when she came home from college and so what are you doing? And I told her about this song and she wrote it out and I was going, ooh, ah. And that was the first time seeing my score in sheet music form. So a little bit of background that is not in my bio, or at least in the short version of it. I was born and raised in Washington, D.C., the fifth of 6 children of a Baptist preacher, a statesman, an articulate genius of a man who, because of the era that he was born in, was not able to go to college, did not have those doors that were open. But he and my mom created a haven for us. As pastors' kids, fortunately, we don't have too much of the trauma that many of my pastors' kids' friends have. Church was an option for us, but it was something we wanted to do. We all were pianists and choir directors, and my genesis really was right there in that nurturing environment that is very common with the African American church. I learned oratory there. I learned the support of the community. When I was playing for the Sunday school as a kid, I started playing taking piano lessons at 6 years old and started playing for our Sunday school at 9. And I remember once playing a hymn and they asked for hymn 86 and I played 68. And as I'm playing the introduction and everybody knew it was the wrong one, instead of it being a traumatic moment that would never have me at the piano again, I just heard one of the sisters say, "That's all right, baby. 68, 68. That's all right. Amen." You know? And so it was that environment that helped all of us to be able to be the musicians that we are. Our church, a Baptist church in the inner city of DC at that time, if you don't know, DC was called Chocolate City. And I say at that time, I was born in 64, the very end of 64. Actually, a little fun note, the day that Dr. King was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize was the day that I entered this world. And I always call myself the peace child, but that's a whole nother thing. Anyway, so our church had, like many African-American churches in that area, lots of immigrants or migrants, people who migrated from the South, African-Americans, to get away from the hard treatment that was happening there. And those traditions, those spirituals they just permeated our church Tuesday night prayer services that I would go as a little kid, the only kid there, hearing these harmonies like the Georgia Sea Islands, where you have these these parallel fourths. And I think that might be why I just love fourths so much today. But our church also had traditional gospel music. You would hear James Cleveland, you would hear something contemporary. At that time, Andre Crouch was contemporary. You would hear standard classical music. We would do Messiah for Christmas. We would do some of the anthems that many African-American composers wrote. We did spirituals, we did classically arranged spirituals. So all I knew was eclecticism when it came to sacred music. And I thought every church was like that until I left home and went away to college. So that's who I am as a musician. We also, even at home, it was not taboo to play secular music. So Motown would be heard. We'd be making up steps and doing little shows at home with our parents applauding and siblings apart. I started singing with my sisters, Kathy, and then the sister under her, Lydia, and I made a trio, and there's 2 siblings above, or 3 more siblings. But anyway, we would sing at our church and do concerts, and these concerts included all sorts of things. I was blessed to go to a junior high school that had an amazing band program, and that propelled me even forward. Unheard of, well, I won't say unheard of, it just was unexpected in the inner city to have a strong African-American teacher who was incredible, who had no resources, but literally changed lives of hundreds and hundreds of children. And then that was Shaw Junior High School, Mr. Lloyd Hoover, I must call his name. And then for high school, I went to McKinley, another school that had an amazing music program. It's interesting that Washington, D.C. public schools at the time was one of the bottom, they were close to the bottom of public schools in the nation. No doubt, in part because of it being predominantly African-American and lack of resources. However, the music programs that I experienced were just second to none. I went to undergrad at Washington University, and it was there, Kathy, my sister, was finishing up was working on her doctorate in music theory at the time. I was a freshman, and she said, "I want you to come to something, just come." I said, "Okay," she's my big sis, what am I gonna say? No, of course not. And so she took me to a composer's concert. So the composers who were on our music faculty had a new music concert. I had never heard, to my conscious awareness, maybe in a movie or something, but had never heard atonal music. And she knew that it was just going to take me. So I literally was on the edge of my seat like this the entire time. And I left the concert going, Kathy, that was so wonderful. Oh my goodness, I just loved it. And it was just, it opened up this world that I just went crazy over. I started taking composition as a freshman and continued studying composition after undergrad. So my focus in undergrad was composition, voice, and piano. And after undergrad, I was blessed to get before I actually studied abroad, I worked in St. Louis for a year as a musical director for the St. Louis Black Repertory Theater Company. I wrote the music for a production of Black Nativity that they did, and also did several other jobs. I'll fast forward, went to Paris on a Rotary scholarship, studied at the École Normale de Musique, classical piano solely. I just wanted to, I always have loved classical piano, but because I was doing all these other things and I couldn't put the time in, it was really my nemesis. So that was a year when I knew I could just focus on it, and I was playing so well by then. Now, you know, it's a little different story. But anyway, practicing 4 hours a day, 8 hours a day was amazing. And by just no intention of my own, someone heard me sing early on when I got there. And it was for a talent show, which I'm really not the one to sign up for talent shows. But anyway, peer pressure, I said yes. I sang a gospel song. They asked me to sing again. And consequently, I ended up singing in many parts of France and other parts of Europe, with the Rotary clubs inviting me and having me do concerts. So I left there, went to graduate school at UC Santa Barbara to do a master's and doctorate in composition. And since then have done a whole bunch of things that I'm very blessed and grateful for. So getting right to music, and I just did not start my little timer, but that's all right. So I wanted to give, I'm going to give little snippets, because I think for all of these, all of the composers, and I know all of them and just love them, it's hard for any composer to just say, here's who I am. And I think more often than not with African-American composers, we many times wear these different hats. So I write, after that first song that you heard, a little bit later, I started writing anthems. I call them anthems, and they are basically music that's classic, choral piece. For mine, they're all based on psalms, and they have a classical focus, I would say, but also gospel inflections. And that usually is in some of the harmonic language, as well as the repetition in the polyphonic vamp, which is a signature of mine. So I'm going to just play a quick excerpt of one called Be Thou Exalted. And it is, this is a recording I did some years ago, but just parts of it. I'm going to skip forward to the polyphonic vamp that I just mentioned, where each So in short, each part has a line that they're doing. It's also a compositional technique that you find a lot in gospel music. And in addition to my psalms, which I think in large African-American church, most of that world knows me for those anthems. I also, I wrote a piece I'm going to just give little tidbits. This is a hymn, a new hymn. A friend of mine wanted to create a hymn book of contemporary hymns. And so I just used the regular strophic format, and it's called Trusting in His Plans for Me. I do write a lot of my own lyrics, and this is an example of one that I also wrote the lyrics for. And let me go back to share. Trusting in His plans for me. It can be used as a sort of chorale type piece or a congregational piece. The very end of it, let's see if it will allow me to. So forgive me for stopping in the middle of phrases, but just to get an idea. Something very accessible and easy. One thing for me, I have a large majority of the pieces I have written have been out of necessity. As I said earlier, started directing choirs when I was a kid, and I have pretty much directed choirs my whole life. Church choirs, university choirs, community choirs, professional choirs. I conduct the Albert McNeil Jubilee Singers. I have also an ensemble of my own. I conduct, I was at Loyola Marymount University. Now I'm at UCLA. I conduct the African American Music Ensemble there. And so many times I'm working with a choir and I write for that choir, or there's a service happening. Many of the composers on here know how that goes, and you got something and I'm like, I can't find anything, I'll just write something. This next piece is my most famous piece. I'll kind of jump ahead. Let me see. How much time do I have? Because I didn't start my time.
7 minutes.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm gonna jump ahead. So Clap Praise is my most famous piece. It really astounds me. I'm so honored and humbled that many choirs across the globe have performed it. I wrote it years ago and published it myself, and thank God did really well. And then I heard from Dr. Tony Leach at Penn State, and he said, I want to do that piece, and they performed it, and they created choreography to it, and they performed it at ACDA, and then it went to a whole nother level with that choreography. So you'll see a choir right now doing that. And a quick question, is that 7 minutes with my 5 minutes of song?
It is.
Perfect.
You
Okay.
wrap at 12:25.
Perfect. Okay, awesome. All right, so here we go. Clap Praise, based on a psalm as well. And I'm gonna only play a part of this. So I'm gonna pause there. So it goes from that into, again, I mentioned a polyphonic vamp. It goes into a clapping cacophony, if you will. Three rhythms that the entire choir introduces, and then I break those rhythms up for each part to do them together. And it was glorious applause because they are wonderful. That is the Mansfield University concert choir, really, really wonderful. That last chord is really triumph, but she elongated it and I'm fine with it. I have to say one important thing about that piece. Because Dr. Leach's version of it, when I say his version, meaning the choreography that his students use, that really has been the signature, but I never actually conceived the piece that way. So I'm going to just play very quickly, just a second or two of another choir, just showing them on the vamp. This is the other extreme, but the Africanisms that are a part of this is really where I am. So just know, I was talking to one composer to say, I'm having a hard time with the steps. I said, no, you don't have to do that. You can make up your own steps. As long as they're just not standing still and robotic, I'm okay with it. So this is Selah Gospel Choir by, the director is David Lee. Forward. Forward. So you get the idea. So please, if you do ever program this, feel free. I am, whatever works for your choir is fine with me. Let's see, I'm saying 2 minutes here. I'm going to play a part of, I'm working on several commissions right now. And one of them that I recently had, I'm trying to escape this. Hold on. All right. One of them that I recently had was by, where is it? Chorus Austin. And this is called One by One. it is, the conductor wanted something that was, I'm pulling it up as I'm talking, gospel-ish. So we've never done gospel, but we want something that's sort of in that flavor. I'm going to fast forward, I'm sorry, but you can just look up one by one, and there's a solo, and then after that goes into a so it's with the conga part is written out, and so you can have that as well. If I could just have 30 seconds, is that okay? Okay, I wanted to play just because it's very different contrast. I'm hoping I still have it. So another piece that I recently did, actually during COVID, is I do a lot of arranging. I love spirituals. And so this is an arrangement of Were You There? And I'll skip around. I'm sorry if that makes your brain foggy. Were you Thank you. Thank you. God bless you.
Well, thank you so much. That's wonderful. And I'm going to ask, I've already asked each of the composers to put their email addresses in the chat so we can make sure that everybody has them. And we'll be sure to do that and send it so that we'll have time for questions and to continue sharing. So thank you so much, Diane, for doing that. Our last composer is with us, Dr. Marques Garrett, and I have to say that before COVID, the American Spiritual Ensemble had the wonderful opportunity of premiering one of his pieces called Rise Shine, which we performed at the ACDA convention in New York, and it was just amazing and received thunderous applause. And also we performed it out in Nebraska, and he is everywhere, and his music is everywhere. And we've already talked a little bit, Marques. Deborah has introduced your intern. He introduced her earlier so that we can really collaborate with you on the website that you're creating. And so we're just delighted to have you here. And we're going to just ask you to take it over and tell us a little bit about you, your compositions, and share. You have a share screen capability if you need to, and you're a pro at this because I've attended many of your different workshops. So take it over and welcome.
Well, good afternoon to most of you. Some of you, it's still good morning. I see one of my students who is at least in Nebraska with me. I was surprised to see you, Mary. Yay. Well, as is already stated, I am Marques Garrett, pronouns he, him, his, and I am honored to be able to present to all of you and to also just to be included with so many fantastic people. I mean, Dr. D, it's so funny that you brought up Be Thou Exalted, because just last week, I believe it was, or maybe earlier this week, I was walking with Brandon Boyd and I mentioned Be Thou Exalted. And I was like, oh, I remember that from the Hampton conference. And we did that when I was in undergrad, and the clap praise, I've just seen so many. I remember when that got published in Raul Dilworth's series, and I was like, let me get a copy of that immediately. So, I mean, it's an honor to be with so many people, Rosephayne Powell and Cedric. I mean, I'm honored to be included. So thank you again, Everett, for the invitation, and Deborah for just pulling all of this stuff together. It's great. So just a little bit about me. I did not grow up in a musical family at all. Music was not a thing. But I tell everybody that I came out of the womb singing instead of crying. And I knew immediately, I mean, I probably knew before music, I knew what music was. I knew that I needed to do something in music. And not gonna lie, there were a couple times in undergrad and shortly after where things didn't always go the way that I wanted them to. And I actually thought about not doing music for a while, but 12 seconds later, my mind got right. And I'm grateful that I was able to stick through it all. I did not have really many lessons growing up. I had 1 year of piano lessons. And after that, it was just my aunt's old piano books that I would go, when I would go to my grandparents' house, I would go to their piano that they hadn't tuned in about 37 years. And I would go into the bench and pull out one of those old books. And I tried to teach myself some stuff, didn't go so well. But I just tried writing stuff. We'll call it composing. But I tried to write stuff down, and I was going through a phase at first where everything was very horizontal. Yeah, there we go. And there were some nice ideas, but again, I had absolutely no clue what I was doing. And I shared some stuff with my high school choir director, and I think he was just like, okay, this exists. And that was the end of that. But then I was blessed to be accepted as an undergraduate student at Hampton University in Virginia. And it was very interesting that I didn't know what music theory was, but it clicked almost immediately. I mean, I got there only knowing what a treble clef and a bass clef looked like. Couldn't tell you what they did. I knew one was at the top, one was at the bottom. That was it. Didn't know key signatures other than C major. I didn't know any rhythmic values shorter than a quarter note, longer than a whole note. And I knew most of the rests. Knew what a sharp and flat looked like, but couldn't tell you what they did. But I knew enough to at least not have the beginning theory stuff. I still don't remember how that happened, but that tonal harmony book, I still remember that blue one. And I went through that thing and I was just like, wow. After my freshman year, I taught myself 4 chapters of that. And I was just like, I love doing this. This is great. And I remember vividly being in a conference or festival choir, collegiate choir, where we performed Rosephayne Powell's Non Nobis Domine. And this was my freshman year. It was at Virginia State University, but Jimmy Abington was the guest clinician while he was teaching at Shaw University. And he taught that one, and I was like, wait a minute. I remember da 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 da, and then da 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 da, all this stuff. Oh, this is cool. All right, you know what? I'm gonna try to write a piece like that. So I wrote a few like that. They were definitely nothing as good as Non Nobis, but I was at least inspired by it, and I still perform that piece and talk about it all the time because it's a great one, and I still aspire to write a piece like Non Nobis Domine by Rosephayne Powell. But the stuff that I learned in theory and the music that I was singing in choir really inspired me to try to write even some other things. I started off doing mostly spirituals, and I called myself doing spiritual arrangements by taking the text of spirituals and then writing my own music. So I didn't even know that I was composing, in the strict sense of the term back then. And then I finally learned what an arrangement was. And I was like, oh, that's what okay, I'm not doing that. Well, I, again, taught myself some theory stuff. And in the summer of 2003, I found this spiritual little David Play on Your Harp. And I had just finished teaching myself common chord modulations, common tone modulations, all that kind of stuff. So I was like, I can do this. So I did that, gave that to Royce L. Dillard, who was the choir director at Hampton at the time. And I had shared some other things with him prior to that. And it was the same response: learn a little bit more in theory, and your music will get better. So I kept doing it. And that piece wasn't all that great, but it was good enough for him to choose it for the opening convocation my sophomore year. And I didn't realize that that was like a thing at all. I was just like, okay, we're singing my song, yay. I wrote a few more pieces. They were all trash, but I still keep them just to remind myself of what it was like back then. Ooh, man, wasn't all that great. But then started writing a little bit more and got a little better with some of the things, and was able to get connected with folks who started saying, hey, you should get your stuff published. And it was just an interesting thing because at first I was composing horizontally, then I learned theory, and so it was all vertical. And now I'm finally starting to get back into more of a horizontal thing, but kind of mixing some of the vertical stuff in there. And everything that I did up until, gosh, I think probably like 2012 was really out of just an intellectual curiosity into music. It wasn't necessarily out of this like heartfelt desire to uphold the old Negro spiritual or anything like that. That was just what I loved singing because we did so many spiritual arrangements at Hampton. So why not? And of course, it's being a concert choir, and we were doing some Roland Carter and Noah Ryder and R. Nathaniel Dett and Hall Johnson. And so, we're thinking 5, 6, 7, 8 parts. I was like Moses Hogan, sometimes 9 and 10 parts. So that's what I was doing at first, trying to be like them, not necessarily trying to make the music accessible for people, but I was writing for the choir that I sang with all the time. And it worked with some pieces, cool. And eventually I was like, okay, well, I'll start writing a few more original pieces. And really quick story, had a really bad breakup, and usually breakups can kind of help you, you get really emotional. So I had a really bad breakup, wrote a song cycle, and that was the first time that some people had said, like, even without, I had a friend who's a pianist, and I was just sharing it with him to say, hey, is this piano part okay? Because I'm not a pianist. And he said, oh my gosh, I can just feel all of the emotion in this song just from playing. And I was like, cool. So then after that, I was like, well, maybe I can like actually combine the mind and the heart with this kind of stuff, and started reading a little bit more. And there was a Choral Journal article where this composer said that when she is getting ready to set vocal music or to write vocal music instead of text, she takes her time reading through the text as much as possible to find the natural rhythms and to allow the text to then decide what the music is going to be based on who she is as a composer. And that was actually quite transformative. So I was not a commissioned composer up until like 3 years ago. I mean, I had like some people, hey, can you write a song for me? It's just like, okay, I don't know. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. But for it to finally be like outside people that didn't know me started asking, I was like, oh, wow. So there was a piece also in Rollo Dilworth's choral series, Dr. D, my piece, Sit Down Servant. And that was one of like my first like real commissions where somebody was like, we're gonna pay you to write a song. Oh my gosh, that's a thing. So that happened. And I actually, as a composer, like when people give me a lot of restrictions, because you give me too much and it's just like, I can go in so many directions and my brain won't settle on anything. So they had given me quite like maybe 8 or 10 different things that they wanted in a piece. Don't do this, we do want that, go here. I was like, cool. I knocked it out like that. Some people just like, write it whenever. And I'm like, you'll be happy. You might get it in 2093. I don't know. But yeah, as of late, some people have asked me to write a few more original pieces, and it's fun. But yeah, sometimes it's just like, I don't know. I kind of miss doing spirituals. But I'm going to actually start off. So I'm going to talk about a few of the recent pieces that I did to kind of talk about who I am as a composer. And I need to backtrack. I think part of the reason why I've been getting some commissions for like just strictly original music is because I tend to talk about that kind of stuff when it comes to Black composers. Some people have kind of like put my name with that. And so they're like, well, if you're talking about it, you should do it too. And I'm like, I don't have to. Like, it's okay. I can talk about female composers without being a woman. So I can talk about that without having to do that. I miss doing arrangements. But anyway, for the American Choral Directors Association, Eastern Division, the same year. Yeah. They commissioned me to write for the junior high honor choir. And Linnell Joy Jenkins was the conductor for that. And if you know her, then you know that she is just the one of the sweetest human beings you will ever meet. She has an energy and just a spirit about her that you just want to be a part of always. And I was just like, okay, cool. This is gonna be nice. So I know kind of what she's like. I watched a few videos of her conducting. So I was like, okay, well, what text can I use? And I found this poem by William Henry Davies, Sing Out, I can't remember the actual title of the poem, but the title of the song is Sing Out My Soul. And being for a junior high choir and understanding that we are having many more conversations now about like mental health and that kind of stuff, I was like, that there's a line in there that says, think not of death, strive not for gold, train up your mind to be content. What matters then, how low your store? Like, you need to tell yourself that think that you're okay with whatever you have. It doesn't matter how little you think you have, it should be enough for you. And so being able to have those kinds of conversations. So I will pull up, I'm gonna have to do 2 things at once. Let's see, what I'll do first is play the audio and then, oh no, don't start that. So sorry, I clicked the wrong button. Yeah, you would think I'd know how to do this with as minis, but I still messed them up. All right, share sound, optimize for video clip. So I'm gonna start the video. Hopefully you can see. Oh no, I didn't mean to do that. You don't need to see the video. I'm gonna start playing it and then I'll pull up the score.
Sing out my soul. Sing out my soul, sing out my soul, sing out my soul.
Okay, so you kind of get the idea of that piece. So, and that was actually, let's see, that was a master chorale of South Florida. Now, the next piece, Dr. D, it was so interesting that you ended up playing a recording from Chorus Austin, because this next piece, I'm gonna play a video from them as well. So, it's so interesting how everything is related to everything, and we are so connected. So I presented at Eastern Division ACDA in 2018, and it was there that I met Anthony Tressick King. He had some upcoming concerts with Seraphic Fire in January of 2019, and he said, "Hey, I would love for you to write a piece for us to do, but also if it can work for a children's choir, that'd be great," because he was conducting the Boston Children's Chorus at the time. Cool, I'll do that. So if you know anything about Dr. Tressick King, he's all about social justice through music. And so he's like, if you can find a text that works with that, all right. So I found a text, My Heart Be Brave. And yeah, a few choirs have done it. Recently, it's going to be coming out actually with Oxford University Press in the new year. And there's a choir up in Canada that asked me to arrange it for tenor bass voices. So that will also be coming out. But I'll just play a little clip of My Heart Be Brave. This was another one of those first times with a choral piece, again, where I said, I'm going to do everything I can to really embody what I feel like is going on in the text. And so, I mean, I sat down, I analyzed the text so much more than I normally would have. And here's the funny thing. I don't usually always like my pieces right after I do them. I didn't like this one, really. It just happened, but I was like, I felt comfortable with giving it over. It took like a year for me to finally be like, oh, I like this piece now. It was just very interesting. But my composition teacher kind of helped me out, not with this piece specifically, but I had 1 year of composition lessons when I was working on my doctorate in music education of all times. But my last year of coursework, I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. And he kind of just gave me a few tips that have just stuck with me, and it's really helped me out. Like, one of the things was, if you come up with a really cool idea, try to find other ways to use that instead of trying to write a bunch of new things all the time. Man, has that saved me a lot of time and stress. All right, so let's see. I'm going to now play My Heart Be Brave. And I'm going to skip ahead just so you can kind of hear a little bit more of the piece. We get to the end, talking about rise up. They did such a great job with that. And I just got the the audio the other day, and I was like, oh, super, oh, that video was super cool. I'll just mention, I mean, Dr. McCorvey already told you about Rise Shine, so I don't need to play that one, but I was just so happy when Tom Trenny at First Plymouth, which is where I sing, said, hey, can you like write a piece for us? Our theme for this concert series is about light or whatever. So I was like, can I do a spiritual, please? I haven't been asked to do one in so long. And I miss it. He was like, yes, of course. And so then I find out the American Spiritual Ensemble would be with us. So it was like them, our church choir of about 80, my chamber singers, and another church choir, and maybe some other students. So it was a great time. What happened was, since in our church choir, we've got like again, 80. So we can do 8-part stuff really easily. And so I did that. And then Tom was playing through it. And he, if you know Tom Trenny, he's always adding a couple of extra things when he's playing through stuff. And I was like, ooh, maybe I can lower the key, take out some of the parts, and he can put a piano part to it. And we did that. And so there are 2 versions of it now. You can either do it with piano in a lower key, which is probably a little easier for some, or if you got, you know, those big voices, go ahead and let them sing those high C's really loud. And, you know, they'll like doing that. So I was just happy. And it was just like, just so much joy that could be placed in that. But one thing with my spirituals, I try as often as possible to keep the melody as unaltered for as long as possible. Because what happens is, now that we're in this contemporary time, in order to be different, the composers are changing stuff so much that I'm like, so what is the actual spiritual melody? At a certain point, it's just like, it's a new composition that's inspired by a spiritual instead of actually being an arrangement, in my personal opinion. And people can disagree with me, and that's totally fine. They're also right. I can be right, you can be right. We can both be right on the same thing, even if we don't agree. But that's just been one of my things. Keep that melody as consistent as possible. Yeah, you can change it up every now and then, but let's just like hear it, because some people don't know what we have arranged unless we actually hear the original part. So that's just my thing when it comes to spiritual. So I'll stop talking now, because I think we've got some other things that we can do, but I'll put my information in the chat. Thank y'all.
Well, thank you so much. This is just wonderful. And this has been such a wonderful morning, and we just have a few more minutes, but I have one question that I'll ask the composers, and then I would like to say that if you'd like to ask some other questions, Deborah, I'm going to ask you to put your email maybe in the chat, and people can send questions to you, and I'll put mine as well, and we can send questions, so that if you have other questions or information about how you want to get in touch with these composers, we can make sure that we do that. The question that I have for the composers, and anybody can answer this question, but you've all alluded to the fact that the different styles that you were introduced to in your childhood and in churches, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize, that you know, they think that if you come up in the African American tradition, that the only thing you sang in church was spirituals or gospel music. And I think people are so surprised to know that the variation of different types of music that you experience, that I experienced in my church choir and in churches, was incredibly broad, and probably even more broad than I experience now in, you know, I go to a mixed church. And but in my childhood, I heard all types of music, and I was wondering if somebody can comment on that.
Yes, I don't think that, as you said, Dr. McCorvey, that's just not uncommon. First, I think part of it has to do, and anyone correct me or offer a different opinion if you have it. I heard one African-American scholar say, for a Black person in America to be successful, we have to major in white. So that's one perspective, meaning we are eclectic. We're not monolithic. We have, one of the things that I love about African-American culture is we just music is so important from our West African roots. It's just important. So we love good music, period. And so sometimes that eclecticism is because a person just has to know all of these different styles, because especially if you go into academia, you are expected, if you're African American, many times you're expected to know gospel, and many Black people don't know gospel music, but you're also expected to be able to work within the classics. And many times that is just what our experience has been.
Any other comments on that?
Yeah, I would add,
Yeah.
growing up in the African American tradition, it was common in our church to have hymns all the time, to sing anthems like Sanctus, in Latin, and gospel music, and old spirituals, a cappella, and lined hymns. So the broad range, and soloists who would do some excerpts from an arranged spiritual or even an operetta piece. So all of it was common, and not just at our church, but in the whole growing up in DC. In our schools, this was common to do that. In public school, I learned French from the 3rd grade on, and I had orchestra from the 3rd grade all the way through public school. So at that time, and even previous generations, and people in my generation, it's not odd. We weren't told that we can't do it. That's what you do. And I think there's a lot to be said for that in the way that we appreciate and share the music that we do. And it's really important for us to encourage people to do that.
I just wanted to say, I agree with that, Dr. McCorvey. As I mentioned earlier, I spent my childhood in Nigeria, and even there, music was very diverse. So I remember, I showed you that picture of us as kids, and kind of our lead composer person. His name was Uche back then. I remember being jealous of him one. It was like Christmas time, because he got picked to do the alto solo from the Messiah, and I didn't. But that's, that was just part of we would sing the Messiah, sing African choral music, and not in languages we understood. Just, so it was like singing in German or whatever. You just learned it, got the rhythms right, and and that was just that diversity. Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much. We are closing in on we have a couple of more minutes, and I would like to just turn it back over to Deborah and say thank you to Deborah, and thank you to the New York Choral Consortium for giving us the platform to do this. And Deborah, if you have any parting words.
Oh, I think you've said all the important ones, and the most important is thank you to all of our artists. But I think that the one really important takeaway from this is that we are all talking, we are all in dialogue, we are all after the same things. We want to share the core of the human experience, the beauty of the human experience through the arts in ways that impact lives. And I know one group that I work with, we've called our season "Can We Talk?" And I think that that's one thing that often is lacking in our society today. And there's a temerity about talking. And today what we have done is to share and to talk. And it's the best thing we can do for our world. And when it can be expressed through music, so much the better. So thank you to all of our artists, conductors, singers, and of course, composers. And thank you, Everett, for putting together this session. What you can expect to see on our website, and it just spells the whole thing out. I was not part of deciding that URL, but it's New York Choral Consortium, all spelled out, .org. And you'll see at the top a Diversity in Action tab. That is very much an emergent area. So it's kind of minimal at the moment, but we're growing it. Mary's going to help us with that. And we don't always make all of our programs available on the website because we look at them as a little bit proprietary for our members, our own membership. but this one we will make available on the website because it needs to be out there. We will put out some promotional material to hopefully have this gain some traction beyond those of us fortunate to participate today. I would also like to put together a sheet that's just a very simple, name of each of our composers, website, and your preferred means of contact. We all have many means that people can reach out to us, but I know sometimes, some kind of messenger, I may say, oh, geez, that's been sitting there for 3.5 weeks. So, we'll gather that from our composers, and hopefully we will see this conversation continue. So thank you.
Well, thank you all so much for being here. Hope you have a great rest of the day. And we hope that we'll be seeing and hearing you somewhere around the world very soon. So thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
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 Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, Tim. I can't wait to dig into your scores.
Oh, my pleasure. I'll be writing you.
All right, please.
All right.
Yes, I've got your stuff. Let me save this chat actually right now.
Yeah, I did the same thing, Diane.
Yeah,
I'm hanging up to get the last bits of it.
Man,
Very good.
I did that earlier and I just remember it. Okay, here we go. Why
I
can't
want to be in touch with you, Timothy, also as well.
Awesome. Thank you. I look forward to it.
Good. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Can you send that
Bye-bye.
chat to me, Debbie? I can't get it for some reason.
Yeah, I will.
Thanks. All right. Bye.
Bye.